I'm Matthew Holland, president of Utah Valley University, and I welcome you to this great institution this evening as we pay tribute to a wonderful man, an extraordinarily gifted artist, Arnold Friberg. We have mixed emotions as we gather this evening. The event was originally scheduled to take place earlier this summer. Arnold was very excited to come down and to participate in the unveiling of the bust, although he mentioned several times that a bust should not be done for one who is living. He must have genuinely believed what he preached. Only a few days before our scheduled event, Arnold was injured in a fall. We were saddened when Heidi called to inform us of the accident and explained that he would not be able to attend the unveiling. A few days later, we received word that our friend Arnold had passed away.
When I was asked to do the bust, Arnold was so self-conscious. I mean, it's hard for those of you who knew Arnold to believe that there was really a humble side, but there really was. Arnold didn't want anything to be self-aggrandizing. He always said, it's not about me, it's about the art. And of course, in our lifetime, we meet a few people who really make a difference and know that when they've passed, that the world is not quite going to be the same with them gone. But Arnold was in good spirits. Heidi had put a little meat on his shoulders when he had been ill for some months. And he said, Ed, I don't want anybody to do my bust. You know, look at my neck, it looks terrible. Look at my hands, I'm nothing but skin and bone. He says, this is terrible, I don't want you. I said, listen, Arnold, when we get to my studio, I have a book on necks. Now you can pick any neck you want, and I'll put an Arnold Schwarzenegger neck on you if you want. So after I completed the bust, and I knew it would be impossible to have Arnold sit and pose, even though I wanted to work so much to work from life. But he allowed me to make a mask, so I put some molding material over his face and made a mold of his face and cast that in plaster so I could use that for reference. But when he arrived at the studio finally, and he and Heidi were there for him to sit, but I just knew that wasn't going to work. But he came up and looked at the bust, and he said, "Oh gosh, Ed, that's really great." This is, you know, he was very complimentary. And I said, so Arnold, what do you think of the neck? And he says, oh, my neck used to look just like that. And how about the hands? Oh, those are great hands. So Arnold was pleased.
I know his work is very recognizable, his style, and again, it's nice to have some of his works here today that we can reflect upon and look at. As has been mentioned by President Holland, I have one of those almost original size illustrations in my office. And I've had it in my office when I was lieutenant governor, and that's kind of what intrigued me about going to see Arnold and say, we need to do a little bit of homage to you and pay tribute. Every day I walk in, I see that painting and George Washington's prayer at Valley Forge. And I can tell you it's an inspiration to me. It makes me reflect upon my forefathers, what they have done, what they went through, the challenges they faced, and what am I doing in my responsibility as we move forward. There's something outside of ourselves that we need to look to as we ask for guidance and courage and wisdom as we move forward. And I think with the prayer at Valley Forge, that was captured. I don't know that everybody knows the story behind the prayer at Valley Forge, but that was a difficult time in the winter of 77 going into 78. And in those times, the armies would take time off from war, and they would winter quarter. And but it was a difficult time. It was estimated that winter that they lost between 2,000 and 3,000 people just to disease in this winter quarters. And you can imagine General Washington saying, what am I going to do? We have a cause that's just. I'm kind of at my wit's end and looking for some higher power, some guidance, which has led to the Prayer at Valley Forge. As an Isaac Potter, I think his name was, that stumbled onto him praying. So we have this in history as far as this event actually occurring, and has been passed down to us by different accounts by this man. I know that when I first was talking to Arnold Friberg about that, he said, Gary, what do you think the focal point of that painting is? And of course, I didn't know exactly, and I mentioned a number of things. But he says, no, it's the hands. It's the focal point of that painting is the hands. And I know we've got a little miniature here, but you can see General Washington's hands, and he would say to me, in the time of the day, it would have been no more pious with the hands in this kind of attitude, as opposed to this clenched hands of a humble servant and a farmer, and just pleading to his heavenly Father that, hey, we need some help. I need some guidance. We've got to get through this. I think there is a divine order for what this country can become. And of course, we know the outcome, and the resolve that was demonstrated in the clasped hands was demonstrated in General Washington's life and all that he did, and eventually became our first president.
There's maybe the only thing I can talk about is how this sculpture, of course, came about. You gentlemen all came to the rehab, which my husband loved rehabs. Every time he went to one, we had to get a guard so he wouldn't walk off. And you decided then, of course, that was a victory, to do the sculpture. Now we still had the problem, who is going to do the sculpture? So you had a very nice gentleman in your Mr. Fairbanks, right? And we don't know, because Ed, of course, was working on those gigantic horses. And what is it, the largest ever sculpture in this country? Right? Yeah, okay. But anyway, we had to compete with all those horses too. But one day we got the word Ed was going to do it. And of course, I like to joke. I said, well, Arnold said, how can he do it? He's got all that stuff to do. And I said, well, he'll probably do it between lunch and breakfast. Of course, that wasn't the right thing to say.
I have a cousin who is a genius in his field, and I watched my mother with my father, who was an artist. And what I began to understand is that one of the great gifts that is given to a creative person, whether it be an artist, a university president, a politician, or a sculptor, is they are given the gift of a magnificent companion. And there are times with my mother, I would hear her say to my father, Rulon, not one more brush stroke, deliver the painting. Now, I know these brothers have never heard that. Heidi never would say anything like that. But I asked Ann, she gave me the best answer I've ever heard. I told her about my mother's story, and she said, oh, I never say that. That's not my place, because what I've learned is every time he works a little longer, it gets better. Love you, Ann, for that one. That says it all.